Hi, ma'am. I'm Deepti, and join me for welcoming Ashraf Patel, the co-founder of Pravah and Commutiny. So, it's a pleasure to have you in Campus Varta. So, I will start with introducing thoda sa Campus Varta. So, Campus Varta is India first edtech media and discovery platform that connects the rural college, schools, and universities on digital platform, and it covers the day-to-day campus activities. And we are the first startup from Bihar which were nominated in the semi-finalist as Forbes Asia 30 under 30.
Nice.
So, ma'am, first, before we begin, I extend my heartiest congratulations to you for and your team for receiving the Social Entrepreneur Award. So, ma'am, it would be great if you could introduce yourself and your venture to the audience. uh, we have two ventures, right? So if you could explain the overlap and the differences of the two ventures, if they exist.
So thank you so much, Deepti, and congratulations for you all being the semi-finalists of the Forbes Award. Some of our alumni have also been finalists of that. So it's really lovely. We are all in the same sort of ecosystem. About Pravah and Commutiny, yeah, thanks so much. I just will share a little bit. Pravah essentially works and was started to work directly with young people, with adolescents and youth, and basically on building leadership for social change. And the whole idea of Pravah was, and it was probably one of the few organizations in that time, 93, 94, which was looking at inside out leadership, which was looking at young people working on themselves, their understanding about themselves, their relationships, and society. So moving from the journey, taking the journey from me to we. That was how we defined the Pravah's first workshop. And so Pravah has held true to this philosophy. And it's about young people taking the journey from me to we, that is society, and then back again. So also enabling society influence you and making it a whole circle of change. And Pravah essentially works with, like I said, adolescents, youth, the whole life cycle of young people. Then as young leaders, then some who set up their own organization, Pravah also joins them through what is called a change rooms journey, that's social entrepreneurs supporting that. And then working with organizations that influence the youth sector, whether they are policymakers or practitioners. So that's Pravah. Commutiny The Youth Collective, as the name suggests, was set up as a collective, as a federation sort of organizations like Pravah. So it is a collective of youth engaging and youth focused organizations in the country. And what do? We basically work on three strategies, which is aggregation, like collectivizing, basically building collectives. So we also have nurtured and right now in the process of nurturing 7 state collectives. The second strategy is capacity building, which is through creation of resources, training resources like books, videos, lots of mechanisms to build capacities of these collective members. And the third is public initiatives and campaigns, which we do together as a collective on issues that matter to the young people or influence young people. Yeah.
Okay. So, ma'am, you said you focus on youth, and youth have various problems. Like few want to work for the social problems, किसी को women empowerment पे काम करना है, caste पे काम करना है, and some want to work for the global problem. So, how do you manage everything? Like, how do you nurture the different backgrounds of these youth?
Okay, so Deepti, the interesting thing about our work is we talk about inside out leadership. So typically all our youth programs start with the exploration of self. Who am I? Where am I headed? What are my aspirations? What are the things that I want to change? and who I want to be. So there is a conversation happening, which is who am I wanting to be and what I want to do. So there is a be-do, both a flavor to this work. And which means what happens is we begin with the self, we begin with the potential of the young person themselves in practically all our programs. And it's so much centered around them. And through that centering, they also are engaged in a lot of exposure to different social issues. Okay. Because in this program, the self is also determined by the engagement with the other and the engagement with society. So there is no independent self. There is an interdependent idea of self, which is constructed in a mutually evolving way with society, correct? So what happens, to answer your question, yes, it's true, young people will come with lots of vision and aspirations for different kinds of issues. They will have different interests and different ways in which they want to make a change. What most of the processes at Pravah and Commutiny do is also enable them to see their passions and their vision for change in a systemic way. So even though they want to work on gender or on caste or on communal issues or on information technology or on fake news, through the processes of engagement, not only ours, but the process and exposure that they go through and the peer engagement, they'll start looking at, some of them already were doing it before, but many of them look at it in a very, in the beginning, one looks at things in a very siloed way. But then you start looking at it in a systemic way. So young people are encouraged to pursue their passions, and Pravah will support their issue, what they want to do. But then over a period of time, they will also try to look at the issues in a systemic way. So there is also a generic understanding of social issues that emerges. Yeah.
So ma'am, out of all the issues, like why did you choose this issue? Matlab, how is your expertise and your co-founder's skills help you solve this problem? Like this youth wala hi kaise aaya wo? How did that idea emerge?
Okay, it's a very lovely question, Deepti, and maybe since a lot of your members here might be young people, so I just want to go back to when we were young. And we had, my background is in corporate sector. Meenu, Arjun and I were both, all three of us working in the same company. And I was in HR, Arjun was also in HR, he was in industrial relations. So he was working with with unions and management and all of that. And I was in corporate HR. And Meenu was in marketing and finance. Okay, so all three of us were good friends. And what happened is when we had a serious communal conflict in 1992-93, and there were riots across the country as well, we were very disturbed by this divide, that we have amongst people. And we felt that we must do something to bridge this divide that is based on identity. Why do we see ourselves as the other so differently? And why it's so much hate and violence just because we come from different communities or gender or caste or background. So kahin pe hame laga, हमको तो कुछ bridge करना है. We also saw the really great divide between the urban and the rural. How in an urban space you have so much access, so much everything. So your mindset is a little different from people coming from the rural area. We saw, there's such a big gap in our understanding of each other. So these were all the things that were bothering us. And why did we decide young people? We thought about it, to be honest. We said, okay, we were coming from corporate background. We decided we were not ready to quit at that moment, to be honest. We were interested in doing our jobs. We were enjoying our jobs. We were doing a good job. And I think we were doing well. We were good professionally. And that time, the organizations we were in were also building our capacities. They really invested in us. So it's not like we wanted to quit everything. So we felt that we want to do something on weekends. Okay, what difference can we make on weekends? We didn't at that point think hum sab chhod denge. And that's when we also felt, so to be honest, what we also tried to do, we said, okay, let's change the mindset of people in our organization. Why do we have to do something else outside? But when we tried to do that, we realized that most people our age and with our backgrounds, they think they've already arrived. They don't need to do anything more. They're already on a successful ladder. And once you're climbing that ladder, life is really made for you. So you just get sometimes disconnected and you don't think about the issues. And we found that it's very difficult to have this conversation with so-called people of our age and people like us. And that's when we said, okay, at least the young people will identify with us. And that's when we said, okay, let's try to work with adolescents and youth, because also we are HR people by background. So our essential core skill is also behavior change work, attitudes, values, psychology, So हमको लगा क्यों ना हम इसको लेकर काम करते हैं. So what we did is basically, it's that hedgehog principle, which is basically thinking about what you want to change, what are you really good at, and what you can actually really do right now, what the world needs. So when we made those circles, I mean, we didn't do that then. But mentally, we really arrived at, let's work with young people in school. So we used to volunteer in schools every weekend. And that's when we started the From Me to We workshops. And we found the workshops were real. In our first workshop itself, which was a 3-day workshop in Ramjas School, Bhusa Road in 1993, we could actually see the transformation in those 3 days of young people moving from actually fear of even engaging with themselves, fear of even looking inward, fear of addressing their parents when they saw in their own households conflict, or in their own households attitudes which were full of discrimination. They knew it was wrong, but they had no voice nor ability. But through the workshop, we saw that these young people were able to actually change. They were actually able to start doing things which they'd never done before. So that's when you felt, okay, this is making a difference. And that's how really the work started. So it was not like we'll set up an NGO right away. It was just what we thought was possible, what we could do, and what we could see change then and there. And that's how we chose this field. And plus, of course, why we stayed there is because it was just so much learning for us. I think everybody who works with young people actually learns back again, because it's like really undoing yourself and learning from the young people. So then it became fun. And a lot of people started asking us to come and do it in their schools. So then we said, chalo, abhi itna kaam hai, ab akele volunteer to nahi kar sakte, chalo full time kar lete hain. That's when we decided to quit. So the plan was not to set up an NGO in the beginning. Yeah.
So,
sorry, long answers to your short questions.
So ma'am, you were saying कि मतलब हम तो अभी young generation से, our parents, your generation, you have seen wars and riots and everything. But then this generation, our generation में mental health की problem बहुत ज़्यादा हो रही है. मतलब और suicide rates तो Japan में it is said कि suicide rates ज़्यादा death हुए हैं suicide से than COVID. Mm-hmm. So are you guys tackling with mental health, because it has devastating outcomes on youth?
So Deepti, I totally agree with you. I think mental health issues have been there forever. I honestly believe. It's only now that the taboo is gone and that it's public and people can say it. So things are coming out in the open. मुझे लगता है ये mental health हमेशा था. Of course, yes, in view of what we are reading, particularly amongst young people, particularly technology, particularly what COVID has also unleashed, that is even greater, of course. It's become huge. So no running away from that. But हाँ, हम mental health को भी देखते हैं. और मैं इसका एक फंडा बताना चाह रही हूँ. हमारी थ्योरी ये है कि ये जो mental health है, एक तो है clinical depression, okay? That is to do with your chemical makeup, okay? That needs a certain kind of attention, medical attention. Then there is a mental health situation which arises of the situation that young people are in and the situation that society is in. So if you really look at the work we do and how we describe, actually I'll be honest, जब हमने शुरू किया 94 में, हमने सोचा what we actually talked about it. We said this is actually mental well-being. We are actually building the well-being of young people by enabling them to go inside, discover themselves, discover who they are, and also engage in society so that they build a connect. Why do some of these issues happen? Issues happen because I'm not able to understand myself. I'm not able to understand what is this world all about. I'm not able to relate with the people around me, correct? Some of the big mental health issues are around these. So the From Me to We curriculum, as well as all the youth programming that we do, it basically has three components. Self, which is the inner work, interpersonal relationships, which is the interpersonal work, building competencies and capacities to empathize, to understand. And the third is societal, which is to understand society, what the hell is going on. And till you make this whole connection and back, I believe everybody's well-being is affected. So it's not just the clinical case, it's just everyone is actually going through a lot of stress. I mean, we may not call everyone as having a mental health issue, but really we have a societal health issue.
Right.
Societal well-being is in big trauma because of issues of discrimination, violence, hate, economic disparity, inequality, right? So जब तक societally भी हम address नहीं करेंगे तो how can इंसान कितना कर लेगा ना? तो दोनों साथ में चलना, the me and the we. So actually, if anyone were to ask me, ours is a preventive process. It enables a young person to get in. It's looking at all these things in a preventive way, building capacities of young people not only to work on themselves, but also change what is not working. And that is well-being for us. Thank you.
So we have been talking about from me to we and social problems. So when there are even bigger problems, we have like we are seeing like global problems, desertification of farmlands, yeah, climate change hai, yeah, water depletion. So and we have, and these problems need your immediate attention. So if so, whether you guys are tackling these problems, so if you're tackling these problems, then how are you tackling these problems? And if you are not tackling these problems, then why are you not tackling these problems?
Nice. Okay, so Deepti, dunya, the world is so huge, okay?
Right.
And there are so many things to address, right? And so what we believe in is the power of collective, the power of coalitions, the power to recognize that everybody has to come together and play a role. And like a system, human body is a system, and each part has a role to play. Yeah, right. I cannot. Now the big issue, I'm not simplifying it, I'm just saying the underlying issues on these matters is, how do you work together? How do you decide together? How do you solve problems together? So we are not experts on climate change. We are not experts on desertification, right? But what we are good at is working with young people, and at least that part, which is about mindset change, about enabling young people to understand these issues and to address them in the way that they think best, and expose them to people who are working on these issues. Okay, so
indirectly you are working for these things. So
it's indirect. So we don't start with the issue, we start with the young person. But young person is in a context. If you're in a context of inequality, environment, and conflict, then you will have to work on these issues, right? And how you work on this is, so when you ask me directly how, so typically in our college program, what happens? Young people go out, there's a program called Smile, where they go out on an immersion for anything from 4 to 8 weeks during their college stint to work with movements. For example, many students have learned from Narmada Bachao Andolan, actually going and volunteering there, how to address, how to understand the issues of displacement. So many students would go to Telonia, SWRC Telonia, to understand, where they learned about what is barefoot scholars, barefoot scientists, learning about how technology in the, how to introduce solar lighting, solar technology in remote areas of the village, because that's the only light that you can have in a school. I mean, I'm giving chota examples. But these are big movements and big organizations. These are two of the big organizations who really have supported. But there's so many, there are at least 100 movements and civil society organizations where these young people have gone, learned about different issues, including the ones you talked about. And then they come back and they apply that thinking, that knowledge in their work. And finally, many of these guys go back and join these organizations or set up initiatives in this field. Okay, so it's like it's not a linear connect. There are many influences happening, and historically, if you see, lots of our alumni are associated with these processes, so they are contributing, and many are leading these.
So ma'am, you just said about college students and all. So as a college student, how can we reach you, and how are you reaching college students? Because as a student of TISS, we are exposed to social problems and everything. So we uh, mm, see the society from a different perspective. So how can we approach you? Uh,
Okay, so we have a lot of TIS alumni who is part of Pravah and Commutiny and members of Commutiny. Just to take you one example, there are many. Like the CEO of Pravah is a TIS, Ritika. She is a TIS alumni, and there are many others. Just to take one example, Farm to Food, the CEO of one of our member organizations, Deep Jyoti Sonu Brahma, is also a TIS alumni of your education program. The CEO or the co-founder of Bharat Calling, a lovely organization, is Sandeep Mehto. He is also TIS. So one is, what I want to say is that TIS alumni is already deeply connects to Commutiny and Youth Collective. So I think one way you can help us is build a sort of an alumni connect for Commutiny and Pravah. We would love to relate much more. How can you relate? How do we connect? A Smile program, which is especially for university students, and social work students also join, because although social work students have great exposure to social issues, but there are some processes which Pravah does, which typically in a social work curriculum you will not have, particularly the inner work, the interpersonal work, and the kind of facilitation and design skills we equip our students with. So we actually build capacities of students to become good facilitators and designers. So they can reach out to 100 of, so they don't only have to reach Pravah. There are 100 organizations like Farm to Food, Bharat Calling. There is Blue Ribbon Movement in Mumbai. And there are 7 state collectives. So my suggestion would be, if they either reach out to us or we can connect them to any of these organizations. And what we would love is if your students and your community of students, please come and join us for 1 month, 2 months immersions. Not only will you help us a lot, but there will be a good exchange and it will be a joint learning.
Okay. So I guess I'm at the end of my questions. So I have 2 more questions. First question is, ma'am, I was going through your annual reports. So your organization has been funded by national and international funding agents. So as a startup or a social venture, funding is very important. It has a key role to play. So how do you approach them, and what does the funding agents look in your venture? How does it happen? If you could just share something.
Okay, so sorry, I'll just go back to your previous question, if you don't mind, 2 minutes. Since you were talking about this, I want to mention that Satya is a TIS graduate. Satya is also doing a lot of great work in Bihar. He is with the CSEI and the National Youth Education NYF, the National Youth Forum.
Okay.
And Govinda is with Yuva Vikas in Orissa. He's also a TIS alumni. So, I mean, not everybody is a TIS alumni because you mentioned TIS, I wanted to say. But we have not only social workers, but young people and young leaders from all professions, who are in the field. So and they've come into this field as students and loved it, enjoyed it, and have started doing youth work themselves. So it's a whole movement of young leaders also continuing to do youth work. Okay, sorry. I'll come to your question on funding. It's very hard today's time. It's not going to be easy for anybody who's going into this sector. I think we were very lucky. We were doing great work. I know that. I think we were also new, and we were doing something at that time which was not very well known. So we got a lot of innovation grants in the beginning. Our first two grants were a Smile Fellowship, which was by Miserere and IGSS. And they gave us a small stipend many years ago, but it was not the stipend that they gave us. They gave us a table in their office, and they gave us recognition and respect. They gave us love. That was the first fellowship that we ever got. The stipend was 2,000 rupees a month. And to me, that was a turning point. The second fellowship we got was the Ashoka Fellowship in 1996. And that, of course, was a well-known fellowship. So I would encourage, and what we have often done is looked out for fellowships to begin with, because they support the startup with a lot of flexibility. Like Pravah is running the Change Rooms Fellowship, which basically gives a lot of flexibility, but a lot of support and hand-holding and inputs, which are very important. So we got a lot of that. Off late, we are basically, I think, sorry, am I correct? Your question is, how do we, sorry, can you repeat your question?
How do you approach, and what does these funding agents look in a venture?
So how do we approach is, now we have an ecosystem, but earlier it was through fellowships and through online mechanisms, but a lot of it is actually by word of mouth. Actually, by just talking about your work and talking to people, including friends and family, just being ready to advocate. I find that if you're ready to advocate, if you're not shy about your work and you believe in it, then people come around. So that's how it has happened to us many times. But yes, we have not been phenomenally funded ever. I think you have to be a lot more out there than probably we have been. It took us a long time to get the kind of resources that we needed. What I would suggest, and how do people how do they access funding right now? I think it's really about uh, uh, publicizing and sharing your work in small bites and in many different ways, in many different contexts. The main way now to do this funding is also to reach out to organizations that are there are many organizations now which are building the ecosystem around funding. So you can actually plug into that. So it's really, I think, 50% luck and 50% effort. I really feel both work.
So, ma'am, apart from funding, what are there other income sources, or?
Yes, we do our the usual online fundraising, Keto and all of that. In global giving, we had done some of these open calls. We also raise money directly from our friends and professional colleagues. So a lot of my batchmates from Excel, a lot of our family members have been very, very strong, solid contributors over the many years. So that's one group. We also do training and consultancies to raise money. So there are multiple strategies.
Okay. So, which brings me to the last question, I guess. Ma'am, during like COVID times, we saw that youth are taking charges because elderly to जा नहीं सकते, बाहर कुछ कर नहीं सकते. So youth are becoming more responsible and taking on charges. So how did it change the strategies of your organization? Like, did the COVID crisis impact anything? Had an impact on the organization or your strategies, anything?
So, yeah, I mean, how can one say? COVID has affected everybody, okay? At an individual level, at a family level, at an organization level, at a societal level, at a global level. So, I mean, I don't think anybody can say it's not affected them. It's been really, really hard. Institutionally, we've had to change a lot. A lot of our funding was also cut back. There was sudden cuts in, we had to shut down one big program of ours. So we've had to suffer quite a bit naturally. So the main impacts have been that cut back on funding, cut back on programs, shut down of programs. We have not had to retrench anybody, but there were contracts, like people who were on short-term contracts who we could not renew. So which is very difficult for organizations. We always think of long-term engagements, no matter whether somebody's come for a short while or not. We always try to make it a long-term engagement. So this has been the big impact. How have we changed? Yes, we converted there is a whole leadership program we do called Samvidhan Live, the Jagrik project, which is on active citizenship and young leaders, adolescents and youth, and running across the country with almost 70 organizations. So this whole journey had to be converted to online action, online engagement and smaller actions. Earlier, the actions that young people would do is go out in the community, do serious community work. Here we had to actually just limit because of the public interface had to be less. So this whole program had to be remodified. With UNICEF now, they're also trying to digitize it. So maybe something good will come out of it. We'll get a digitized version. But at the end of the day, that's not a solution. We have to work in communities. So this happened. The second thing in our whole ecosystem, right now I'm talking about only Commutiny, the hub. But Commutiny is 100 organizations. So each of these organizations, they just went out and did relief work. And they just stepped out. They were there, like you said, young people, youth volunteers, youth organizers, they were best motivated and geared to be at the scene of action. So they have done phenomenal work on ground and still supporting the communities who have, lost a lot. So that I think work will continue. You literally have to change your work. You go into relief and rehabilitation and education, that kind of work. So that has happened in the whole ecosystem. The other third thing has happened is, of course, well-being. So all the youth organizations in our ecosystem are also working hard to bring this whole well-being agenda more on the ground through their programs.
Okay. So, ma'am, lastly, would you like to have send a message to the youth if you would?
Okay. I think my message to the youth is that yes, the world is bringing to us phenomenal challenges. And yes, the times at the moment are really very, very difficult. But the one way to navigate this journey is to remain deeply connected to yourself and watch and observe and build your learning. Keep learning. If learning is at the core, we often get lost in, okay, I want to achieve this, I want to get there. But failures and successes will keep coming. But if we are learning all the time and evolving ourselves as we evolve the world, Commutiny stands for the first mutiny within that comes when we work with communities other than ourselves. So the whole idea is work on your transformation by working on social transformation, by working outside of yourself and making that whole cycle happen. So if we keep working at it and continuing to learn, then we are likely to manage to navigate and make the change and be the change which we want to see both.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for your time and thank you for sharing so much knowledge with us.
Thank you so much, Deepti and Komal. It's been really nice. I just really appreciate the way you conducted this conversation. It was I found it really deep, and I really appreciate all your efforts. So lots of love and best wishes to Campus Varta.